But anyway, so I got back this morning. We've been doing this series on the evolution of the church and society. And we talked originally about what church isn't, and in the last week we talked about what the church is. And one of the things I really feel is important is the church as healers. Healers in society. I felt a lot of that with Matt yesterday as well, and on a different level. And healing, it has for a long time been some people get all excited when you start talking about it, some people get tense, some people get hives, some people sweat, some people got the hanky, whatever. All kinds of things happen when we start talking about the term healing in the church. And it's one thing, when I first wrote the series out, I was thinking in terms of how we're going to make it work. This one happened to fall on a day where I was coming back. There was a chance we were going to be over at the school, and it was a 10 a.m. service. And so there's a lot of things you can read into it. But really, in the inception of building the series, I wanted Gabe to do this one. And the reason I wanted Gabe to do this one is because I think for the church, it's one thing to parade a relatively healthy individual back and forth on the stage, talk about how the church should be healers, and how the church should be all this, and me stand up there and say, oh yeah, God wants to do this. I think to have someone be able to sit here and talk from a completely different side of God as a healer. And so originally my goal was to have Gabe do this anyway. It ended up being perfect, just in general, because of scheduling. But the reality is this is one that I really feel like we're going to get a great perspective from Gabe on that is unlike what you would normally hear. And so Gabe's going to do the service on the church's evolution of healing. So, and his hanky.
Thanks, Pastor. Appreciate that. Yeah, so before we get just kind of a little where we're headed, today will be a little more testimonial than exegetical. We're not just like taking one passage and mining it, which is a wonderful and appropriate and often preferable approach on Sunday morning. That's just not what we're doing today. I'm going to be pretty honest about about both some physical problems and some of the struggle that comes with having them. And we are definitely not going to answer all of the questions today. There are some things we will bring up the question and not be able to answer it. One of the things we're going to talk about is why God doesn't heal people some of the time, or most of the time, or at least it can seem like most of the time. I want to talk about how we respond to that, and how I think that's more important than whether or not a supernatural, miraculous thing takes place. At the end of our time today, we are going to take some time and pray for people who want to have prayer for healing. And that's good and appropriate and biblical. I'll apologize. You may recall from previous weeks with announcements, sometimes I'm not totally sharp and focused. Today maybe just a little bit, there may be some of that. I'm pretty medicated. Honestly, it's been a pretty rough week physically. And then most of the time where I was available this week, I spent most of my free time trying to figure out how to adapt those Gangnam style dance moves to the wheelchair. Trying to do this and do this a little bit and just make the chair jump. But, I've still got a long way to go. Plus, turns out, I don't know any Korean. Oh, there you go. Sorry. We got it okay. Sometimes when you're in church and you're hearing somebody talk, you can take away something that has really nothing to do with what they said, but God speaks to you about something in the middle of it. I've had that happen before, both as a person giving a message or sitting and hearing, people go up and say, oh, it was so great. I really felt like, God, at this point, I didn't really even say that. So sometimes God just speaks to you. One of those things that could be sparked today is, just as I kind of talk about my experience, my testimony, there may be something where you just, not a specific, I'm just going to adapt that part of Gabe's story into my life. Just co-opt it, because that's something really interesting. No, just something about sharing your faith or your story with the people that are around you. So I'm hoping there may be some of that. Right up front, I want to be very clear. I absolutely know for certain that God can and does supernaturally, miraculously heal. He does. Not just did, does. And my biggest way that I know that, other than just, the Bible says so, I've heard also plenty of missionaries, including Brother Ralph Hyatt from Argentina with his puppet. What?
His ventriloquist.
Yeah, what's his name? Felipe. Yeah, way to pay attention when he came to your church. Couldn't remember the guy's name. Here's the deal. Here's how I know, all right? And that is because longer ago now that I'm compared to Felipe, well, 20 years ago, God did something really supernatural and miraculous in my mom. And that's a picture of me and my mom. Right around the time that this story takes place. This picture, actually, my first day at Bethany College, just a day or two before I met Adam. So there's the other relevance. And I just wanted to show everyone that I did at one time have here. And it was awesome. So my mom, I don't remember how, some blood test went funny, something suspicious, something wasn't right. And they ended up doing a test where they put a camera in her and found some kind of tumors or tumor-like something in her intestinal tract. And, weren't sure if it was cancer, weren't sure if it was something else. Really none of the scenarios of what it could be were particularly good. So, and doctors saw the pictures, I saw the pictures, right? Like, oh, that does not look good, those are not supposed to be there. So she was scheduled for surgery. They went in to do the surgery, opened her up, and they were just not there. There wasn't anything there. And, sewed her back up, and it was so funny because the hospital's main concern was, were we going to sue them because they had misdiagnosed her? They would send in people to her room like twice a day. So, just to ask these questions, and she just kept saying, no, God did a miracle. God, yes, they were really there. You saw the pictures, I saw the pictures. You went in, looked at it for yourself, and they weren't there. You misdiagnosed. This is so that we know that God did something miraculous and supernatural. This is the most overt story. This isn't, I didn't read about this in Christianity Today. This is my mom. And, just that emotional turmoil of being in the hospital that day with my dad and my grandparents and my sister. Just, not knowing, is it cancer? Is it spread? And just really the confused look on the doctor's face when he came out to explain to us that when they got in there was just nothing there. I personally, I didn't see inside Mom's body, but I did actually see the pictures, and there was really something there. And so I don't want to discount for a moment that God can and does heal people. Meanwhile, I have my own stuff going on. This is an MRI picture. I put this on Facebook a little while ago. It's like a side view of my spine, right? You can kind of see the vertebrae there. The white there is the spinal cord, all the nerves kind of, and then down here, what I have is a bunch of tissue that is pushing on and, in some cases, adhering, stuck to my spinal cord. There's some other kind of peripheral things happening, but that's it's a result of I was born with spina bifida. There's a bunch of different kinds of spina bifida. The one that I have, my skin was closed over. Sometimes there's an open wound, closed over, but some of my vertebrae didn't form all the way, and there's this extra tissue called lipoma tissue that's pushing up against. And so they went in, I had surgery when I was 3 months old, to open up a little more space even in one of the vertebrae, so that tissue would have more room to be. And I really thought that, vertebrae, you can kind of think like from the top, it's supposed to be like this, I had really thought until, honestly, a month ago, that mine was like this, and there was just an opening, and that's how I was getting in. But it's really more like this. Just those bottom 3 vertebrae, they're just, back part is there, but it doesn't curve around and protect the spinal cord at all. I had surgery, so it's also stuck in some tissue at the base of my spine. It's called tethering. And so when I was 15, as I was growing, I had surgery at Stanford to untether my spinal cord. As I grew, I was this tall when I was 15, about 100 pounds less, but this tall. And as I grew, it was just stretching on my spinal cord. And so I remember being a sophomore walking down the hallway in high school, my legs would just freeze up and just have to go, hey guys, could you just a baby step out of it? And it would be, okay, but if I hadn't had that surgery at 15, I would have been in a wheelchair much, much quicker. And then sometime in the last, 5 years, it's hard to know for sure, it's really been retethering, and combination of that lipoma tissue and scar tissue is just pushing up against more and more against my spinal cord, and not just adhering on the bottom, but all through where it's open toward those bottom level here. So I've got stuff and that's been why I've had, it's been less than a year I've been using the chair, but when I moved to Riverbank, I wasn't even using the cane full time yet, and it's been this dramatic decline in functionality, but it's more even still about just pain level than it is. My left leg doesn't work great, but I can hobble around, I can get around with it, especially with the cane, kind of compensate for that. But I can't come here and stand up for 5 minutes and chat with people and sit in a reasonably comfortable chair and just make it, then that would just cost me, it'd be tough. So I know we read these verses, and we see them through the Bible about healing. And I think we automatically assume, just with the Bible in general, that we just automatically understand context, and that we can immediately apply these at face value of our English translations of the Bible and apply them directly to our situations. And I'm not saying that these verses are not relevant, because they totally are. It's just sometimes there's a little more to it than just, by his stripes we're, oh yeah. In King James, by the way, bruises there is stripes, which is of course where we get striper. Isaiah 53:5. Just pausing for a moment, just to reflect on the impact striper has had on my life. And thanks to 10 years of youth ministry, it's possible second generation. I was so proud when we did 80s night in Santa Cruz, and they got the striper songs right away. Little crime. Rick Kua, they had no idea. That was the final challenge. Rick Kua was the bass player, played with KD for a while. Got one solo. Yeah. All right. Here you go. Thanks, John. Or verses like these where we read these stories about Jesus healing thousands of people, and those things are true and relevant. I mean, we read these verses and we know that God can and does heal and does have compassion on people that have physical problems. One thing that Adam mentioned last week, a quote from his mom, the lovely and talented Terry Lima, that God has an affinity for the poor. And I think that is not only true in things he was talking about last week, but also in terms of healing. I think we hear more stories, 10 times more stories about people being miraculously healed in third world countries than we do in America or Europe. And I don't know if that's because we have access to better health care, and so their situation is more dire, and that's why God does it there. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's crossed my mind that that's a possibility, but I have not had any kind of divine word from God, and I have not found any verses about you know, God wants to heal you unless you have Kaiser. And then you're good and you don't need him. I was on a mission trip. I love mission trips. One of the things about youth ministry I miss the most, and I just don't know how I can do it now anyway, but 13, 14 years ago, I was with a group we went on a trip to Mexico City, which is just, man, it's an amazing place. And we were in a garbage dump outside of the city where, you know, thousands of people live in this garbage dump. And we were doing a service where we were giving away food, and we were giving away shoes to kids, and praying for people. And it just sort of struck me, like, what if I had been born there? Without something supernatural, I wouldn't have lived very long. There are just things that come with spina bifida, often with fluid buildup in the brain and spinal cord fluid leakage and infections and things like that. Instead, I was born at Stanford because we lived close to there. There was a hospital closer, but for the prenatal appointments, it was cheaper to go to Stanford because you could get like a resident or someone still in school. So that's why my parents went to Stanford, why I was born at Stanford. I'm born and they take me right out of the room. And my parents don't really even know what's going on. And it just turns out that I happen to be born at one of the premier birth defects clinic hospitals in the world. Just happened to, And so, if I had been born in Mexico City, living in the dump, would God have, I don't know, would there have been a healing? Would I have died in 3 months? I don't know. I cannot say definitively that we see fewer miracles because we have access to better health care. But I think even that question is part of the problem, because when we don't see God work the way that we expect to see him work, I think we want to find someone to blame for that, find something or someone to blame for that. And it's easy to feel guilty when a healing doesn't happen, whether you're praying for yourself or you're praying for someone else. We pray with all the faith we can muster, we say all the right things, we slip in I believe, Lord, but help my unbelief. And then the miracles don't happen. And it's easy to blame ourselves that we did something wrong. But I know, just like I know God does heal, I know absolutely that there are times that he does not. And I know that because this woman in this passage, who we hold up as the standard bearer of all time for having faith just to touch the hem of his garment, she was healed. She does not have a blog, is not available to speak at your church, has never been on Christian television because she is dead. The demon-possessed guy, the demons went into the pigs, dead. The silver and gold have I none guy, dead. Lazarus, dead again. At some point, you think there wasn't somebody that prayed for Lazarus the second time to be raised from the dead? Of course there was. And almost like, God, you already know how to do this one. It's just, look at your notes from the last time. It's easy. They're dead because at some point God didn't miraculously heal them or bring them back from the dead, and that is okay, because it would be a really crowded world if everyone who ever prayed for healing never died. Terraforming Mars as we speak. That last little one there about Mars, that wasn't in my notes. That was just off the cuff. Also, it's cool to be up here speaking and have my own cup holder with me. I'm kind of digging that. You might want to try it sometime. Well, we like to find blame. When I was a kid, there was an evangelist that we had come visit our church a number of times. He was an old British William Hartman. You know, I think he looked probably something kind of like that, based on my memory. And he would come, and he was always about healing. That was his big thing, is he wanted to see miracles. And so as a kid, I went up and I asked him, you know, I wanted prayer. And he asked me what was wrong. I said, I think I just said, I don't think, if I had to say it into the microphone, I almost certainly didn't say spina bifida because I was a little more, I don't know, problematic for me at that point. It was some embarrassment or whatever. Not that any of my friends knew what that meant. So he prayed for me. Now, as a 9-year-old kid, I was clumsy and, you know, awkward, but not, you know, in pain all the time, and not, I mean, noticeably, you know, handicapped. Just, I had this thing wrong with my back, and I knew it was, you know, they had expressed at that point the potential for further problems down the road. I had to be seen once a year at the birth defects clinic at Stanford just to get checked up on. So he prays for me, and then he says, "How do you feel?" He said, "Does your back hurt?" And I said, "Well, not right now." Because, you know, it didn't when I went up. And he just rips me right in the front of it. "Whoa, don't say that, that's," you know, like just giving me, you know, this 4,700-year-old guy just yelling at me as a kid that I'm going to sabotage God's miracle by possibly floating the idea that it might hurt later. And I've been told also that healing has happened, that it's part of the salvation package, that well-meaning believers, and I mean really sincere people like that, tell me, once you pray, you are healed. That's part of the deal. By his stripes, he's on the cross, he took our infirmities, and the healing maybe just hasn't manifested itself. That's all. You're healed, but it just hasn't shown up yet. And I've heard that on a number of occasions. Adam and I had a professor, and Lisa, and Angie, had a professor in college. His name was Truett Bobo, and I won't take the time to do the voice. But just in class one day, he talked about this concept, and he said, "Do you still have the sniffles? Then you're not healed." And he is just brilliant, and this statement in class was just so liberating for me, that it wasn't just that I need to walk around saying, "Oh no, I'm healed," when the MRI clearly shows that that is not the case. Jesus uses this metaphor of the mustard seed. We have to have faith the size of a mustard seed, and we can move a mountain. And it's a metaphor, but I think we've somehow, at least some facets of the American church, where we've taken that almost as, I don't know, a sarcastic statement or ironic, that what he really meant was, yeah, you have to have a lot of faith. Somehow we've twisted it beyond this idea that just a little bit of faith is what you need because God provides the rest. And that somehow we need, you know, even taking this passage and making it mean it's all about how much faith you have. So let me just say definitively to you, as someone who has spent a lifetime thinking about these kinds of things, you have enough faith. Do you have enough faith to ask God? Then you have enough faith for him to perform and do what he has said he was going to do and apply in your situation. It is not a matter of the person getting prayed for. The person praying didn't have enough faith. Mustard seed, little. It's not a metaphor for something. He really meant something big. Now, if you want to say that I'm in a wheelchair because I don't have enough faith, that's fine. I can carry that. But I'm not the only person who's ever prayed for me. Thousands of prayers have been prayed for me in my life. And I'm talking about specific God healed, gave back kind of prayers. I still regularly show up on the prayer chain list at my home church. My parents still attend. My mom will send it to me once in a while. I'm on there 3 times a week because it goes out every day on email. My spiritual mentors have prayed for me. Pastors that I've served under, been under, have prayed for me. My wife and kids have prayed for me. And have your own kids pray for you is just an amazing experience. And you just think, well, how could God not listen to that? But you can say that I don't have enough faith. That's fine. You can say that those people don't have enough faith. But if you suggest to me that my grandmother doesn't have enough faith, I'm probably going to punch you in the face. She is one of those grandmas with the red phone hotline direct to God. All right, and she has her network of little grandmas that also pray. She's in an assisted living place. She's doing pretty well. She's 85. She's awesome, and has some free time on her hands. So sometimes she'll call and say, "Just want you to know that I prayed for you today." Well, I mean, I pray for you all the time, but extra today. More than just a regular, a little extra. Just feeling like you need a little extra faith today. Yeah. This is how I know that it is not like God is just waiting till we, like one of the thermometers when you're trying to raise money. Like, okay, if we get up to this level, I will do the miracle. It's not that. At some point in my life, someone who was praying for me just had enough faith for God to do a miraculous, supernatural healing. And here's one of those things that I really want us to grasp, and I struggle with sometimes. Because I can't understand exactly why God heals sometimes and doesn't heal other times, it doesn't make the rest of my faith invalid. There are baseball stats that I can't fully explain. XFIP, UZR 150, barely getting a handle on wins above replacement. That does not negate or diminish my ability to love and explain and appreciate baseball. Right? Just like this one thing, this aspect of God's character I don't understand, doesn't invalidate the rest of my faith or your faith about it. So after years of personal struggle with this, of feeling like it's my fault, feeling like God doesn't do miracles, all these things, here's what I have concluded. That sometimes God doesn't heal us on purpose. It's not that He's ignoring. It's not that there's not enough faith. My purpose in life is God's glory. That's it. That's what I'm about. I want to be a person who points people to Jesus. And I want to do that with who I am and what I do much more loudly than with what I say. And I have also come to the conclusion after too many years that God is smarter than me. And He sees the big picture a little more clearly than I do. And I really genuinely do trust Him. So, if I know that He heals, and I'm confident that qualifying prayers of faith have been said on my behalf, and I know He's smarter than me, and my health continues to be in a rapid decline, my only conclusion can then be that He is intentionally not healing me. Which either means He's a jerk, or His plan involves me enduring these problems. And since I know He's not a jerk, then it must be that this is what He wants and intends. And if the goal of goals, my pastor said, I'll talk about it more in a minute, used to say this, the goal of goals is the glory of God. And if my part in that is best served by being in pain and being in a wheelchair, I am honestly all for it. If that's what He needs me to do so that He is glorified, cool, I am in. I will do my part. There are people who are asked to do much, much, much more difficult things than that. Yeah, my body hurts. And I go home and I sit in my special chair and pull my laptop onto me. My wife and kids take care of me way more than that they should have to, and I can fire up the PlayStation now, the PS3, from the controller. I don't even have to get up to turn it on video games anymore. I'm not enduring as much as a lot of other people have endured for God's glory to be fulfilled. I mean, I would like to be supernaturally healed. I am down with that, and I will be very public about that if that were to take place. I will take pictures of my MRI and my new MRI and travel all over the world and show them. If there was some other way for me to be fixed immediately, some kind of, I don't know, mutant healing factor or miracle pill or magic wand that could somehow fix it all for me, that's cool. I'm open to that, God. I haven't stopped praying that God would heal me. My grandma has not stopped praying that God would heal me. Or one of these things coming into play. But if God's plan is best served by me living a life full of faith from a wheelchair, that is okay with me. I mentioned this is my friend. I always have to be careful to say this in the right order. Friend and former pastor. Sometimes I mess it up and I say former friend and pastor. That's not true. Friend, former pastor, and boss. I think it was Barney Wiggett. And he has a really fantastic blog. And I just want a couple little excerpts from it. Well, I'm not sure if I should be contending for a healing miracle or pleading for grace to endure my malady. It helps me when I focus my attention on how good God is, how wise are His judgments, and how reliable is His track record. Then my faith is in Him instead of a certain outcome. I trust in Him rather than the formula I've concocted in order to get from Him what I want. Now you need to understand. When I worked for Barney, we would talk. He would couch things when he would. He had problems with his neck and his back, but he would always say, like, yeah, my neck's sore today, but it's nothing compared to what you're dealing with. No, it's really unnecessary. I'm not comparing. He doesn't say that anymore. Between the time that he was my pastor and now, in a very short amount of time, his wife was having an affair. He was so rattled that he had to step down. I mean, his life was in turmoil. He stepped down from his role. That was the only job he ever had, being a pastor, in his early 50s. His church, his job, his ministry. His wife left him. Then fractured his neck, found out because he had cancer in his bones. All literally within about 3 or 4 months. So he doesn't say anymore, nothing compared to what he doesn't have to say that. His cancer is in remission, but it's still there and can pop back up. And he lives in San Francisco, in the mission district. He's on disability. He lives in a little apartment owned by a church. He's just involved in 4 or 5 outreaches a week where they go into parks in the Tenderloin or Golden Park and they preach the gospel and give away food and volunteers in another homeless shelter and sings worship music while the people are online. The guy just loves Jesus and has found a new way to serve Him. And just let me show you one other thing from him. I'm pretty sure that if in a certain circumstance my focus is on suffering well, God is not automatically unable or unwilling to make me well. Or vice versa, if my faith is aimed at getting well, it's not like I'm going to be unable to suffer well. I want to give you a little backstory on Barney just for some context, so you understand where he's coming from saying this, and why this is so significant to me. Both because this is a guy that I really love, and was so supportive of me when I was working under him. Just one quick look. I stepped down from being the youth pastor and stayed in the church and ended up being on the church council. That doesn't happen. Okay? But because of his character and the way he leads, that was just normal and totally fine. He brought someone else in to run you through, but I was involved in other ways. But he's that kind of a guy. But this is just so significant to me because no matter what mood I'm in, no matter if I'm trusting God for endurance or healing, it's that I'm trusting Him and that I endeavor to honor Him in all circumstances and to use the brain that He gave me. And that last part's important because part of it, what we do, is sometimes we need to use our brain and go to the doctor. Following Jesus is never and has never been about making the followers of Jesus happy and comfortable. It's just, those are not part of what God has promised us, happy and comfortable. It's about being more like Him. It's about pointing people to Him. And it's about, sometimes, about people being able to see Him more clearly by the way that His followers deal with adversity. A couple weeks ago, a month ago or so, post handshaking and hugging time, you guys gather around and pray for me. It's just meant the world to me. Timeliness of it. I had just recently seen a doctor at Stanford again say, anything? And he said, there is no surgery to help you. If you have, I put some of this on Facebook, but sorry for the recap. If you have surgery, you will be in the same amount of pain. You will totally lose function in your legs and probably have some other problems. So basically, no, there is no surgery. It will only make you worse. Maybe try aqua therapy just to, make yourself feel a little more flexible. So we just went home feeling like, well, I appreciate the definitive answer. And I don't know if it was that Sunday or the following Sunday. You guys pray. And then through this circumstances that to me is only described as God at work. Insurance called, they didn't want to send me back to Stanford for any more follow-up, which I didn't even know for sure there was going to be anymore. They wanted to send me to see their guy. But I just got seen at Stanford. Okay, and just, go see our guy in Sacramento. Okay, I guess, second opinion won't hurt. They're going to cover it. They were going to cover the one visit to Stanford. And that all happened because Angie's job had changed in the middle. Insurance had changed. Still good, just different. Just these things where God is just... So I looked the guy up before I go see him. And he's legit. He's more of an expert in spina bifida than the guy that I saw at Stanford. I'm sure that guy is a very excellent neurosurgeon, but not a spina bifida expert. See, this guy here is absolutely a spina bifida expert. That's what he does. That surgery that I had where he untethered my spinal cord when I was 15, he does like 30 to 50 of those a year. He's the head of the neurosurgery department at the head Sutter building. He's like their top guy. And formerly had worked at Stanford and helped develop some of their pediatric spina bifida treatment programs. So he said, if you get seen at Stanford, you need to be seen by the pediatric guy because they have way more experience. So this guy says that we could absolutely do surgery. He said, not can, should. We absolutely should do surgery. And explained why the things that the other doctor had said were not, significant risks. Explain how the surgery works, how it's going to help. I will be in less pain. I may, if things go poorly, like my left leg works not as good as my right leg, so like my right leg could drop to this level, that's still enough to, get into the car from the wheelchair. People that just have total loss of their legs are just, I'm in awe of them. How do you get into the wheelchair? How do you get out of bed? It's amazing. That's not really a risk. Have surgery. It's going to be a rough recovery. But potentially buy me several or many years where it just hurts less. And especially given my kids' ages of 8 and 10, these are pretty important years coming up. All that to say, I was talking to Michael, talking about all this surgery. He's a real thoughtful kid and can be real concerned about stuff. So I really want to make sure he's feeling good, comfortable about everything. And I was talking about one of the things that I'm looking forward to is having the opportunity in the hospital to live out in front of people what it looks like to go through that stuff as someone who trusts and follows Jesus. From the way that I treat nurses, the people that come and pray. It's an exciting opportunity to show what it looks like, to reveal God through those circumstances. I'm really looking forward to that as a byproduct of what's going to be happening. We have those opportunities often to show people around us what it looks like to serve God when we're hurt. Just a few things that I want us to remember. These are the takeaway things. God does heal. He does. Sometimes I find myself using the word can in that sentence. God can heal. For me, I'm trying not to let myself say it anymore. He can, he does. Not always, but he does. Keep praying. When we prayed here that Sunday, I was, I hurt more now than I did a month ago. But amazing, supernatural things happen after that are going to lead to improvement. Keep praying. If you have someone you've been praying for years about something, or yourself, keep praying. That's one of those things that the Bible, I think, is clear on about this subject. Pray. Ask God to do it. It's the story about the knocking on the judge's door, if you're familiar with that, just confuses me. Is it that we just keep asking until God gets annoyed with us to hear answers? I don't really get that one entirely. But I know that it's our responsibility and our task to keep praying. Suffer well. If you're dealing with something, and God can, and I promise you this, can and does give us the ability to endure and to suffer well and to live a life committed to His glory through whatever that thing is that you're dealing with. Do it well. And no matter what the solution is, no matter what God does in that, if He removes the tumors in your intestinal tract, or you end up in a wheelchair at 40 when, trust Him, because He is at work. He is doing something. He's earned your trust, and He's worthy of it. Adam and I just talked about today. Didn't want to miss this opportunity to pray for healing for people. And as we wrap up, sorry, missed a couple of okay. Yeah, would you? We want to make sure that we give an opportunity to pray this morning for people that want prayer for healing. And I'm good with the standing in for someone and praying also. I'm down with that. you know, so just a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to ask our elders and pastor to come, and we're going to just lay hands on people and pray. If you got something that you want to be prayed for, or you want to stand in for someone who needs healing and you want God to do something in their life, we want to do that because it is our task to pray and to trust. Right? Those are the things that we are to do. It's not our responsibility to qualify some arbitrary rules that we have created, for God to work. If we do this, He will. No. We do what we do. He does what He does. We do our part, and we trust Him. Right. I would love to be miraculously healed. In fact, I have little hope that God is going to heal me, and just a little too much. And it'll be like super soldier serum when skinny Steve Rogers comes out of the chamber. He is Captain America. Like, I'm hoping for that. Yes, I'm a 43-year-old rookie on the Giants. I'm down, I'm excited about that because I want to be Roy Hobbs. So, this might be one. So why don't we have the elders and our pastor come, and if you want to have someone pray for you or for someone that you're standing in for, let's do that. Some kind of music. Or
Do you want to strike her?
yeah, can we have a striker?
Calling on you.
Nice. We'll break in the school auditorium next week with a little to help with that. So we're going to just pray, and we're just going to take a few minutes. I am sure that every one of you knows someone who, besides me, who needs a miracle, who benefit from healing. And we're going to pray our prayers with at least a mustard seed level of faith, which is what God asks. And we're going to expect God to hear our prayers, confident that God's going to hear our prayers. If you want to come and have one of the elders or Adam or myself pray for you for that one you're standing in for, that's cool. So let's just take a few minutes. We're just going to pray. We're just going to bow our heads. We're just going to pray. And if you want prayer for someone, just come on up and do that. Just, right? Yeah.
God, this morning we just thank you for giving us a message on something that's so very close to you. How we can see how disappointing life could be without you in our life. God, thank you for making a lot of things clear this morning. Lord, it's about suffering well, all those other things that Gabe said, but most important, God, is that you be glorified, Lord, in all that we do, Lord. We pray that you be glorified. And again, we ask you, Lord, to continue to bless Gabe in his life. And give him the strength to always carry on.
I wasn't, Gabe had actually asked me to share something I wasn't really going to share. Is, But I think to kind of go off what Gabe said, I think you guys, it's interesting that I had Gabe do this sermon, I think, because when I was born, I don't share this very often, just because it's kind of a story, but pretty much never. When I was born, it didn't go well. So other than how I look now, it didn't go well. I was actually, the pregnancy was bad. I went without oxygen for a long time, and all kinds of horrible things. And the doctors actually sent me home and told my parents that they were going to take care of me the rest of my life, and which they probably tell you they still are. But they were informed that I was going to be someone that they were going to have to give consistent care to the rest of my life. And so for the first almost 14 months of my life, I didn't do anything. I just laid there, and which they probably tell you I still do as well. But I just laid there and didn't do anything. I was docile, and it's funny because the difference between our stories is that at that time, my mother really wasn't a Christian, and my dad certainly was not. So there weren't a lot of prayers going up for me. You know, we talked at breakfast last Tuesday that it was probably 50,000 times you've been prayed for in your life between those who know you and your grandma and your parents and your sister, 50,000 times. My guess is the amount of prayers that went up for me the first 14 months, other than, oh, dear God, help us out, I don't know. I don't know. Not very many. And then my grandmother, who is an awful human being, she was, I'm being nice. She decided one day she was going to take me to a crusade. And so my mom lied to my dad about where I was at, and my grandma swooped me out of the house and took me to an Assemblies of God church, where they were doing one of those crusades. And like I said, it's a weird story to share because I obviously don't remember it. But the next day I was fine. After they prayed for me, and the next day they came home and I was standing up in the crib looking at them. And my mom's like, something's wrong with him. So they took me to the doctor. The doctor's like, I don't know. He's fine. So we have kind of completely opposite stories. And it was more natural for me to want Gabe to share with you today than I think for me. Because a lot of it too is he's gone through this as a person. I was a baby, I guess deep in the recesses of my psyche, I might remember it, but but as far as growing up, I didn't. And my parents didn't really share that story with me much, because usually when I share that story, it becomes awkward, weird, and then it becomes a joke or something. Mostly I mean, but so just so you guys understand, God does heal. I mean, as evidenced by my life in general. And, you can look at that healing as look at everybody next to you. Because, this in essence is the core of what started and began this church began with a healing in 1974. And so you can take a look around and credit a lot of what God does and maybe not get it. But he does heal. And he does heal in first world countries on occasion. And I'm evidence of that. And, the reality is I don't know why. My mom swears that I prayed for a dead chicken and it jumped up and ran off when I was like 4. And she tells the weird stories. She said, when you came home after being touched by Jesus, she's like, your life was weird. And she's like, you were just running around thinking you could heal everything.
And she would continue to say that.
She would also continue to say that is weird. But, I don't know. I don't know why God does what he does. Because I was too young to remember any of it, and I benefited nothing from it as far as I know. Because I don't remember. And then I've had to watch, my best friend for 20-ish years, go through so much, and I'm like, I've seen everybody and their mother pray for him, including my mother. Right? So, like I said, it's just one of those things where as Christians, God does heal. We don't always know. We just know that it's all in his plan and he does it as according. And I think, and that's why when we prayed for Gabe a month and a half ago, part of me was like, this is a big part of his testimony to me. I don't know how to, that's tough for me, And I would love to watch him run out of here at full speed instead of roll out of here. But I also know that God's got a lot more wisdom than I do, and God's got a lot bigger plan. But I think as Christians, we can't stop praying for it. I don't know how many people pray for me other than that do. I don't even know if my grandma prayed for me. I just know that some guy, couldn't even tell you who he is, you know, but it's one of those things. So just know that you may not think it goes on around you, but every time you talk to me, you can say that it made a difference. You know, you may never encounter it for yourself, but you can. Every time you encounter me, you're encountering it for yourself. I mean, God does things. So anyway,
Maybe it was that guy who yelled at me for saying he doesn't hurt right now.
yeah, I know faith.
Parent.
I was 14 months old. I was easily fooled.
Faith like a child.
That's
Ignorant.
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so don't be afraid to pray. And don't be afraid as a Christian to look stupid. You know, because it's God's choice. Learn to trust God, what He wants to do. So that's it. Hopefully you guys are challenged to go do something. Come up and tell Gabe thank you personally. And awesome. Thanks, man. I like